Good morning, Sergeant.
Good morning.
Could you introduce yourself to the jury?
I'm Sergeant Kenny Phillips. I work at the jail as a sergeant on day shift, and also I'm over transports.
Were you involved in transporting and booking in the defendant back on February the 3rd of 2013?
Yes, sir.
During that time, did the defendant get irritated with you, Lieutenant Bass?
Yes, sir. At one point he did.
Did you learn from him what he was irritated about?
He wanted a cigarette. You know, at one point he wanted a cigarette to smoke. I told him I didn't have cigarettes.
No, pass the witness.
The medication that he takes in jail, do you give that to him on a daily basis? How does he get his medication?
His medication is given by officers that are under me.
And that medication is prescribed by a psychiatrist, is that right?
I assume, or the jail doctor. I don't know which exactly.
Well, it's someone who prescribes medication that he takes today for his issues. It's a physician, correct?
Yes, sir.
Someone who's licensed to practice medicine in the state of Texas.
Yes, sir.
How many times a day does he take the medication? Do you know?
I believe 3.
You know what medication it is?
No, sir.
Thank you, Sergeant. Have a safe day.
Thank you.
Now, when you first observed the defendant and interacted with the defendant on February the 3rd, 2013, what was your sense and impression of his demeanor?
I would have called him under the influence, maybe.
And did you have occasion as working in the jail to observe him after he was taken into custody for the hours, days, weeks, and months following February 3rd, 2013?
Yes, sir.
How would you describe the change in his physical appearance, his demeanor, and his attitude during that time?
A great deal. I mean, we detox people that come in, you know, that we feel that are intoxicated or have been on drugs or other things. So he was in a detox situation for a while.
Pass the witness, Your Honor.
Thank you, Sergeant, for being here. I appreciate it. Have a safe day.
Thank you.
Pass the witness, Your Honor.
Now, I know you're not a physician, but you're aware that the medication you take is for psychiatric reasons, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And he's not taking it just to take it, he's taking it because he needs it, is that fair to say?
Yes, sir.
No further questions?
Pass the witness, Your Honor.
No further questions?
Archie, you may step down.
Whose phone does this come from?
This was from Chris Kyle's phone.
So it's in his contacts?
Yes.
People he knows, people whose phone he would call regularly.
Yes.
And did you also determine whether there was a contact in Chris's phone, Chris Kyle's phone, with Eddie Ray Routh or his family?
Yes.
And then did you also look at, in Chris Kyle's phone, voicemails received, and then also outgoing and incoming calls, particularly from the defendant, Eddie Ray Routh?
Yes.
Now, State's Exhibit 310. Have you listened to that?
Yes, I have.
Actually listened to it this morning.
Yes.
And based on your forensic exam of Chris Kyle's phone, is that a true and accurate recording of the voicemails that were received on Chris Kyle's phone from Eddie Routh?
Yes, they are.
Mr. Schaefer, before we play these voicemails, I'd like to go over with you the dates and times that are associated with these voicemails. So I'm looking here at voicemail number 4 from the extraction report. So if we want to know the time of this call on January the 26th, 2013, we would have to subtract 6 hours from 8:13 p.m., correct?
That's correct.
So this would be what time?
2:13.
In the afternoon.
Yes.
And so here are we seeing who the call is from?
So it's from is the number, and that will always be in there. The name would not be in there unless there was a name associated with that number.
So the fact that there's a name associated with this number, does that indicate that Eddie Ralph was in the contacts of Chris Kyle's phone
Yes,
with that number?
yes,
And then this will tell us the duration of the call.
that's correct.
20 seconds is this first one.
Yes,
This date and time, 1:26 at 2:13
yes,
p.m. Central Standard Time. So we're doing. Then the next one was at
that would be 5:18 p.m.
5:18 p.m. on 1/28/13.
Yes,
Yeah, that was a very short call, just a 6-second call.
that's correct.
And again, these are all voicemails, so we would expect them to be short.
Yes,
And then the third one is
1:29. It's be 4 p.m.
4 p.m. on 1/29.
Yes,
And then this last one is on 2/2/13, and that would be with the conversion to Central Standard Time,
that would be 9 a.m.
9 a.m.
Sir, this is Eddie Ralph, Jody Ralph's son. I just giving you a call, Chris, and seeing how you're doing today. If you give me a call back, the number is 972-218-5328. Look forward to talking to you. Talk to you later, bye. Hi, brother. Give me a shout, man. Talk to you later, bye. Hi, man. I was just giving you a shout. I was just going to call you and talk to you about this drawer day we're having. You know, it's kind of a sad day when it rains. You know, it's good, but it is sad. But rains will come and rains will leave. So I guess that's what they do. All right. Talk to you later. Bye. Hi, this is Eddie. If you could give me a call back, my number is 972-218-5328. Talk to you later. Bye.
So those would have been those 4 calls that we just looked at on this call log.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, now this is also, it's a call log from Chris Kyle's phone,
Yes,
showing calls to and from the number associated with Eddie Ray Ralph from Chris's contacts.
yes.
And so if we can kind of go through, and how do we tell if it's Chris calling Eddie or Eddie calling Chris?
Well, in the first column there, it tells you what type of call it is. So it will say incoming, outgoing, or missed.
Okay, so outgoing, this would be who calling who?
That would be an outgoing call from Chris Kyle to Eddie Ralph.
So he's calling Eddie on, chronologically it starts at the bottom, right?
That's correct.
So it starts on 1/28/13. Now here we see it says UTC -6. That conversion's already been done for us,
That's
right?
correct. Yes. And the next one is now an outgoing call from Chris to Eddie.
On 2/2/13
Yes,
at 9:27 a.m.
that's correct.
And that was almost a 4-minute call.
Yes,
And then this last one is also on 2/2/13
yes,
from Chris to Eddie
yes,
at 12:38 p.m.
that's correct.
Comparing both of these men's phones associated with Chad and Chris, were you able to pull off some text messages between the two of them?
Yes,
Around 2:30 p.m. on February the 2nd, the two of them are texting each other.
yes,
Chris Kyle's phone and Chad Littlefield's phone.
that's correct.
Okay, now which one is which?
The on the bottom, yes, that one. That's showing a instant message from. So that's the number that sent it, which is the 1428 number.
Okay. And have you determined that's the phone number associated with Chris Kyle?
Yes,
So this is Chris Kyle, the 1428 number.
correct.
Okay, so he sends this text. This dude is straight up nuts.
Correct.
And then the second number is this Chad replying,
That's correct.
the 8808 number.
Yes,
And he says, sitting behind me, watch my 6.
yes.
From your training and experience, do you know what that term watch my 6 means?
Just watch behind me.
Watch my back?
Yes,
And then the next one is Chris again. Says got it.
Correct.
Pass the witness.
So do your records indicate the last time Mr. Kyle's phone called Mr. Ralph was on the 2nd of February 2013 around, was it around 12:30 p.m. or 1:30 p.m.?
12:38 p.m. on the 2nd.
And then approximately 2 hours later, there's some interaction between Mr. Littlefield and Mr. Kyle. Is that right? The text message from Chris Kyle to Mr. Littlefield?
Yes.
And that is documented as being the text from Mr. Kyle to Mr. Littlefield happened at 2:30 p.m. That'd be Texas time. Is that right?
If it says -6, yes.
It does.
Okay.
Just to reiterate, this is Mr. Kyle. This is his impression of Mr. Ralph. This dude is straight up nuts. And that's communicated to his friend, Mr. Littlefield. Is that right?
Yes.
And Mr. Littlefield's response is, sitting behind me, watch my 6. And then Mr. Kyle's response to that was, got it.
Correct.
No further questions.
I have no further questions from Mr. Shepherd.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Good morning, Ranger.
Morning.
Could you introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, sir. Danny Briley.
And Ranger Briley, how are you currently employed in law enforcement?
Currently, I'm a Texas Ranger.
Did you have occasion to become involved in the investigation of the killings of Chris Kyle and Chad Littlefield on February 2nd, 2013?
Yes, I did.
And after you had prepared for some time, did you then eventually go ahead and interview the defendant?
Yes, I did.
Once you had informed the defendant of his constitutional right to remain silent, did he agree to speak with you?
He did.
And did y'all talk about a variety of topics, including the facts of this case?
Yes, we did.
Did you encounter some of the notable instincts that people have in telling the truth as you interviewed the defendant?
Yes, I did.
Could you explain?
I would see, again, on some of the hard questions, blocking. It's what we call blocking is when a person is very close to saying something, but then they realize they better not say that, and that, again, tells me this is critical. I've asked you a question about this specific issue, and all of a sudden we're talking about something else. That tells me that I need to come back to that particular issue because apparently that's important to that person.
Did he at times respond to your questions in a unusual, maybe even bizarre manner?
Yes, he did.
Could you explain to the jury some examples of how he responded to the hard questions you were asking?
Well, he responded several times in a very philosophical manner. I noted that he responded in a very philosophical manner at times, and I was listening very closely to what he was saying and the words that he was using, because again, I'm going to try to use some of the words that he's using. I would hear some military terms that I'm very familiar with, and he would use these terms like souls, which I know from my line of work and also working with the military, souls to a lot of military is you're talking about life, but it's the way that he would talk was very, again, in my opinion, philosophical. And yes, some of the stuff I had no clue what he's talking about.
Were there things that you had no clue about at the time, which as you studied his communications, his family background, his telephone calls that you've learned may have had more meaning than you realized at the time?
Oh, certainly. I mean, I started post this interview, of course, I dove off into learning everything I could about him and his family, his fellow Marines, anyone that I could, to learn more about what's normal, what's the deal with this guy, that helped me to go back after the fact and look at this interview some more and understand it more.
And did you find him to be unusual, just in general terms?
I did.
Were there times when his responses to your specific questions seemed to have no logical connection to what you were asking?
Yes.
Could you give the jury some examples of specific questions that you asked and sort of illogical or strange answers that you got?
Well, initially, and I don't remember what the question was, he starts comparing pig shit to bullshit and things like that, things that was like, we're not talking about that. So what I would do to find out if he's just trying to play games with me or not was I'd start hitting him with very specific questions. And when I pinned him down on questions, he would answer the questions. And more specifically, I wanted to know, did you know what you were doing was wrong? And there's several times that I addressed this with him. And clearly he knew what he was doing was wrong.
Did the defendant confess to killing Chad Littlefield and Chris Kyle?
Yes, he did.
Did he describe for you in enough detail to satisfy you how that was done?
Yes, he did.
Did the defendant address the questions that you posed about whether he knew what he had done was wrong?
Yes, he did.
And what did he state about that?
He stated he knew that it was wrong to kill them. That he wished he hadn't done it. That if he could apologize to the families, he would. That if he could have done it differently, he would have. That he was sorry for what he had done.
I talked with him a little bit this evening. He ain't had a rough time. I have been having a pretty rough time of it. I just want to sit in here and visit with you and talk to you tonight and see what I can do. Is there anywhere you can keep taking on? I have to talk to these guys about doing that. Still trying to find out a lot of stuff. Me too. I mean, I'm trying to find out more about the world that I've been living in too. I never knew I was in this deep when I was looking at the computer screens when I was in Iraq. I never thought it was. Sure. I mean, you can look at, yeah. When you're looking at the screen, it doesn't make sense to you at the time, but then you really realize what's happening, Yeah. Like, it's astonishing, Exactly. What? Right. Well, since they have you in this building, and we'll talk about the government. The government wants me to read constitutional rights, because you have all the protections, and also I'll read those to you, and then we can talk. Well, the Constitution cares. Yeah. Let me just read that, and we'll go from there. You have the right to remain silent and not make any statement at all. And any statement you make may be used against you at your trial. Any statement you make may be used as evidence against you in court. You have the right to have a lawyer present to advise you prior to and during any question. If you are unable to employ a lawyer, you have the right to have a lawyer appointed to advise you prior to and during any question. You have the right to terminate the interview at any time. You understand all the rights. I go around and talk to people a lot, and I never knew counseling was more, counseling between men and women needed to be more heavy in the world than it did, but
when you're surrounded on all fronts where you began, you can't just start in one place, you know?
Right. You understand those processes that they were talking about, right?
Well, I've been living with somebody with their hand on my ass my whole life. You know?
Yeah.
I'm not okay with that. That's not right.
Somebody doing that to you.
It's so sad how it had to happen and stuff, you know, and how it did happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, I just wish it would stop, you know? If there are world councils that can speak about this, there has to be. There has to be to keep people accountable.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
evidently, you know,
You're right.
for stuff like this that people that you can't walk on the ground with because they never walked on the same ground with you, you know what I mean?
Right. Well, I want you to know, I work for the Texas Rangers, and what we do is we investigate major crimes, homicides. We have all the resources that we utilize to look into those kinds of cases. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
And I know what you went through today has been very difficult for you. And I want to talk about what happened. And you can start with when you woke up today and what happened.
Well, you know, I keep talking to Chris, you know. I keep talking to Chris in my world. Seems like every time I talk to another man named Chris, I just get sent to another man named Chris. I think about talking to the wolf, you know, to the one that's got what the ones in the sky are the ones that fly, you know what I mean? The pigs in the world, they can truly say they're pigs. I've been smelling it this whole time, you know. I'm just tired of everybody's fucking bullshit. I can smell bullshit and pig shit, you know. I can tell the difference between two different kinds of pigs. Shit. I don't know how you can smell your shit. And I'm not trying to say nobody's shit stinking, but shit's stinking, you know what I mean?
And what exactly happened today after you woke up?
I'm finally getting best. Peace of my mind, you know?
Yeah.
Peace of my mind back that I won't ever get back.
Where are you from, Eddie? I mean, I don't know you. Understand that. I don't know where you're from.
I was born right here in this land, in Lancaster, that we're standing in today. Lancaster, Texas. This is where I was born. Well, not born, but this is where I was raised.
Fine. And what kind of education do you have?
Just high school. I went to high school, I went to join the Marine Corps. After I got out of high school, it wasn't the street that I was turning for, it was the street that I was trying to come back to get. You know, our streets have not been straight here in Texas forever. You know what I mean? No town square. I mean, there's towns that are square and then there's towns that are fixed. And there's no real square town. There can be. There can be square towns around America. And there can be prairie towns. Sure. You know.
What did you do in the Marine Corps?
I worked as a prison guard, and I worked on the gun, so it's like tit for tat, you know.
Yeah.
Who's saying who's right and who's wrong? You know, nobody wants to admit that they're right. Nobody wants to admit that they're wrong. I'm the only man that can change it.
Yeah.
And that's why you're on my background now.
Yeah. How long were you in the Marine Corps?
4 years.
How did you meet Chris?
Well, he was the one that was protecting the schools, you know, from my mom. You know, my mom, she was a teacher. So,
School teacher?
no, I finally met the guy, you know, I smelled it for what it was worth. I was like,
What's his last name?
he was a child.
Kyle.
Yeah, he was a child.
And what's that other guy's name?
I couldn't even remember.
And when was the first time you met the other guy?
First time I ever met either one of them was yesterday. I didn't know who they were, you know.
Yeah. Okay.
I knew who they were, but I didn't know, you know, who they were.
Okay.
Very evident now who they were, because I'm obviously here on the top side of the world. So,
Yeah.
no.
Well, how did you meet them? Did you meet them at your house? Or did,
They came and got me in my house. So,
and then where did they take you?
we drove down into the country out there. And then we went and did some shooting sports, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Some. You know,
What kind of shooting sports?
well, I imagine they're headhunters, you know. Trying to hunt everybody down that did them wrong before, you know. I'm not trying to hunt down anybody that did wrong. Are you?
I try to be as reasonable and normal as I can.
I try to be as normal and as reasonable as I can every day. I'm thinking about it every day. I'm like, I'm pretty damn reasonable.
Yeah.
I'm pretty damn fair.
Right. What happened out there today on shooting sports? What kind of guns?
I was reasonable and fair with the boys, you know. They looked at me in the eyes and I looked at them in the eyes, and then
And what happened to them today from your perspective?
well, I can't just keep eating my soul up about this, you know. And you can't just keep letting people eat your soul up for free, you know. It's not what it's about. It's about having the soul that you have in you for yourself. And I still got tons of people that are eating on my soul right now. I haven't even been able to sleep. Because I've been waiting for them to come back and get my soul.
Yeah.
You know that feels.
I understand.
You know? I just wish the world wasn't such a soulless place, you know? Sometimes it feels like there's no soul for the soup anymore, anywhere. I feel like I'm be writing down books and
Well, tell me what happened out there. So you were with Chris and that other guy.
well, you know, I've seen, you know, evidently the Tommy Dixon party wants to run rampant in America. Tommy Dixon times are here to punch, you know. Reds are already eating the Indians. We know that. It's tragic. The ones that can't eat the Indians is one, you know. So we're gonna have to have problems about. I can't see any, there's gotta be a common ground for me to work on that better, so we can all get better, you know, there's gotta be common grounds. The warlords aren't very happy with me. I know that. everybody knows that in town. I can start making that go right. I mean, obviously.
You saw your sister today, and you told her something bad happened, right? What did you tell her?
I told her I had to kill a man today. It wasn't a want to or a need. It was a need. I had to get out of that situation I was in today. That man, not know. I was going to be the next one that would be up there getting my head shot. Completely off, you know.
And how many did you have to kill today?
2. And I'd much rather put in work, you know, against it, but
What did you kill them with?
it was a pistol.
What caliber?
It was a 9.
It was a 9. Was this a semi-automatic or revolver?
It was just it was semi-automatic.
What brand gun?
I think it was a SIG. It was a SIG sour, you know.
What did you do with that gun?
Well, sit on that truck, that's why I'm treating, you know, when I pulled back into town, it didn't feel like I could talk to Jesse or anybody like that. Nobody wanted to talk to me about what was right to do. Everybody wants me to do the right things, sure. But nobody wants me to pay for it.
Right.
Yeah. I know what's right. Everybody wants me to live for free out on these farms that are high fence and stuff and just shoot for a living. Well, I mean, I can keep shooting for a living.
How many times did you shoot him today?
A couple few shots are fired.
How close were you to him?
I was right up close to him. I didn't mean to be so close, but
Did they know you were going to shoot? They didn't know. Why do you think that?
because their training wasn't as good. My training's been better, you know, my life.
Who did you shoot first?
The ones that I could identify with better, you know, clearly identify. The one that I could clearly identify that was, I knew if I did not take out his soul, he was coming to take mine next. Or something like his gangsters was coming to take one of my souls next, one of his kids' gangsters. I'm just tired of playing chess with my life. It's not about playing chess pieces in life. I mean, it is about playing chess pieces in life, obviously. Yeah. The chess holds the power.
Right. Was there a time today you used any drugs?
Yeah, I did use some tobacco today.
And some other kind of drugs? That's true, right?
Pure adrenaline, yes.
Yeah.
I've been running on pure adrenaline for a couple days now straight. This is one of the first time I've got to feel safe was up here at this police station.
Right.
With more police around me.
Yeah, it's kind of looking at your eyes a little bit constricted. I thought maybe you might have used some methamphetamine or something today.
I have not.
Oh, you have not?
I did not.
Have you used
That's
it?
why I've been having such a hard time sleeping because I haven't been taking drugs and I can't sleep at night. Well, who can sleep in that world? Sandman keeps winning, you know what I mean? I tell what I know is right, you get out the front door. Well, they just keep
Wow. Yeah, no, you know, yeah. Let me ask you, have you ever used methamphetamine before? Never?
Drugs are what's bringing us into these wars, ladies. I know it is. It's about what drugs can get done the fastest by the quickest drug lords will. It's not about that, it's about getting everybody healthy together, you know? You can eat souls when you're down here, you know, the ones that you're given. But you can never make any more after the true souls are gone, you know? Once all the true souls are gone, you're fucked.
About what time did this happen? You know, there's range.
I don't know, maybe around 2 o'clock or so.
And after you killed them, what did you do next?
I fled. I didn't know what else to do. My adrenaline was so high, I didn't know what was right, I didn't know what was wrong. I mean, I know what was right now, but I left, you know.
Where were the keys to the medical you drove away in? Do you remember? Show me your finger.
Well, the keys were in it, you know.
Your keys were in it?
No, the keys were in it.
Oh, the keys were in it.
So it was never really like it was, you know, took it. The keys were already in the truck. It was, yeah, pretty much given to me. So
What did you do with the gun that you had? I mean, did you take it with you into the vehicle and then drive away? That is, did you feel bad for doing that? Yes.
just
You know, what you do today is wrong, right? You understand that?
yes, sir.
What do you think should happen?
Nothing can keep covering it up forever.
That's the reason you fled, right? Because you knew it was wrong.
Well, I knew that there was certain shit that was wrong about it.
Some of that certain shit was killing you. You knew that was wrong. Right?
Right.
And you knew driving away, thinking that truck was wrong. And where did you drive to after that?
Well, if I was so right, I should have just stayed.
Are you asking me, should you have stayed?
Yes.
Shouldn't have done it in the first place. You know, these men, they're heroes.
Right.
You understand that? Ultimate heroes.
Right.
They've been protecting you and me
For a while now.
for a
guess I need to be doing more thinking in this town than hurting people.
Right. Was there a bomb, like a drug bomb in some of your stuff?
Tobacco.
Is that what was in the bomb? Is that true or not? I don't know. You know, you have to be truthful with me. If it wasn't, just be true. What was in that bomb?
I'm adding there's probably some pot in there too, you know, a little bit of pot.
Alright, and what else?
You know, shit, you can't trust anything in Texas with weed in it, because it's usually laced up, you know, laced up so fucking tight with different drugs.
If yours was laced, what do you think it would have been laced with?
Probably some of that wet, or I don't know, could have been anything.
What do you mean by that? Could have been wet?
Could have been any kind of particular drug that was put in the weed, you know.
Where did you get it?
I haven't bought any in a while.
Had you used it today? You have,
Yeah,
and you're being truthful with me.
yes, sir. I smoked a little bit today. Okay. I've been trying to relax, nothing's been relaxing me. The only thing that was happening to me was pot. You know, it was growing here and helping me. Now that I've got so many abandonment issues and trust issues here that I don't know what the fuck to think, you know. I've been having these problems in my town since I was growing up, you know, since a boy. I'm trying to fix this shit that's wrong in our country right now.
What did these guys say to you today? When you were with them, what did they tell you?
They didn't really talk to me about much, you know, they're just, you know, talking about a common man, you know.
Yeah, tell me what they said to you.
Well, you can't walk around as a common man in a world of states, you know.
Is that what they told you?
If that's what the world is seeing, yeah.
I'm gonna see that.
They are a mistake. I'm not a mistake. I'm tired of missing out on my life because of this shit.
I want you to tell me what these men told you today, these heroes you were with. Tell me what they told you today.
Well, you know, they're telling me about, you know, like stuff they've done, stuff they've experienced and stuff. Well, I've already seen that stuff on the other pond.
You have?
Yeah. And I came back to this one and it's happening more and more rapid, even more here in Lancaster than anywhere, you know.
And how are they helping you today?
Who's that? Which man?
The men that you killed, how are they helping you today? When they were talking to you?
Talking to me pretty shitty about it, you know. neither side was being nice about it, you know.
Did you do any target practicing today?
I did.
Tell me about that.
Well, you know, I loaded up a 45 and I shot it. You know,
What kind of distance?
wasn't a distance or anything, but it was out there a little ways. You know, it wasn't far. But still hit my mark when I needed to hit my mark true, you know.
Absolutely. What else did you shoot today?
Wrong that amount.
Okay. What kind of 45 was it you shot? Did some target practicing with?
It was, I guess it was like a revolver.
Was that gun used to shoot anyone today?
A revolver. No.
All right. What other kinds of guns did you target practice with today?
Well, there's a bunch of other ones out there, fully autos out there, and I never shot any of the targets though. Yeah.
Those boxes of other guns you mentioned, did you shoot anything with them?
No. I left them for what they were. So we're meant to be here for some purpose. You know?
Yeah. Was the other guy named Chad?
Yeah.
You remember that to be true, right?
Yeah.
Where did you shoot him?
So is there any way I can see my parents yet? Did they make it in yet?
I have not heard.
Anybody heard about them yet?
I haven't heard that.
You talk up there and see if they've heard from them.
Sure.
I'd like to see them, see if I can at least hug my mom. One last time, you know.
You want to do that because you know what you did wrong today. Because you shot Teddy Chris, right? Yep. You feel bad about that? What's your dad's birthday? 9/30/87. I gotta get these cuffs off the back of my neck. First keep straining on my phone on that stuff. The wall ain't that thick in here. Or heavy. Yeah. You know what I mean? I know what you mean. Is there anything you'd like to see with the families? Yeah, I'm just sorry for what I've done. You know, we can work this out. Okay. You mean that, don't you? I'll be back. How are you doing, Dad? So I was wondering about mom and dad, are they in town yet, or? I would check with you. Because he, yes, I didn't. When you come back, I'll go there and check with you, and give me your, I'll close all the way up. And they're getting these presents taken on? Yeah. It's like they're down more comfortably. At this right there, at this time, not like that. I know that you're going to lose them a little bit. I'll lose them early. Or, I'm not going to pull this in my hands. She will somebody stink. Yeah. No, she got rules. You just have rules on her. Yeah, that they lives on for a minute. Yes, it look like. Yeah. Chris, you don't know anything. Know this. I said, you don't know anything, please know this. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad I am here too. I'm glad we're talking to you. So we won't get those demons out your head. I know you do. I want to go get help for this. I do. Okay? I wish I could give you silver brain. but I can't make that call because I'll look you again in my house. Somebody else is pulling through. I go the next time I saw you, tell me about the facility down in Waco. Right. And why you talking and let you go down there? I don't know. I already perceived it. Took me a while to find out the family and their status. They're gonna see you tomorrow. They're staying overnight in Abilene. Right. So they're gonna see you tomorrow. So that's, to answer your question, took me a while. I had to go find them. Right. To get the answers, but I had some things I wanted to clarify with you. The 9mm, the SIG that you said you used to kill him with, is that your personal SIG? Or no, that was the other guys. Okay. So, alright. What did they do after you shot them? Can you explain that to me? They lay there and they weren't really anymore. So. Okay. About what time did that happen? You know, 30 o'clock or so. Okay. And then you left and you drove to your sister's house. Yeah. And you talked to your sister and you told her what you did. Was there some other guns in that same vehicle you were in? Did you ask your sister if she wanted to see those guns? Do you remember that? Yeah, I did. Why did you want to show her? I wanted to see her. Okay. Yeah. All right. Let me ask you this. You have stated to me that you would like to say you're sorry for what you've done, like to the families. What would you say to them if you had an opportunity to talk to them right now? I tell them I'm so sorry for what I've done, and if I would have done it differently, I'd have done it so much differently. So does he think this one on me? The clothes that you have on now, where did you get those? From my home. What were you wearing today out there when you at the gun range? That's what I was wearing. That's what you were wearing? You didn't change clothes? No. Can you think of anything else you would say? No. Can you think of what that marijuana was laced with? It was wet. What was it with? could have been from outside. That's what we've been, yeah. Well, I'm gonna step out of here and, get these guys to get back with you, all right? I told you where your family's at. Quality counts. Yeah, that's where your family's at. And the other one is the family's out there grieving, right? And you know the difference between right and wrong, right? Yes, sir. You do. Okay. All right, let me, see if I can go see what these other girls are doing, okay? Sure, why they talk to me about maybe, you talk to them about that when they come up here, okay? Sure. Do you have a cell phone or anything like that yourself? Do you have it on you? Do you know your phone number? What is that? Can't remember off the top of my head. You tried to run from the police, right? Is that right? I heard him talking to you, trying to get you to give up. What I heard him saying is, just kind of get out. Surrender, right? Why weren't you compliant? Because of what happened? Okay. Good. What do you want to tell your mom? I love her. What do you tell your sister? I love her too. Do you wish you said it never happened? You seem like you won't cry about it. I do. I see the water in your eyes. Yeah. If you take it back, you would. You notice any blood on your boots? Yeah. A little bit. Have a seat. Sit down. And I'll have somebody come over here and get you, okay? Okay.
Mr. Nash. Mr. Moore.
So, the same thing about leaving. It's leaving my two anyone in here. I just trying to get on it. Because you know, I'll be able to smoke a cig or something and go outside, get some fresh air, maybe that might help. As soon as I get a hold of them, they'll come in here and kick it up with them, see what they say. Yes, we all have, okay, that's what I'm going to take, all that kind of stuff now, so, how you been? Feel all right? We're working with this handcuffs. That's what he went up there to talk to. They're bigger dogs. Yeah. Sure would like to have them off. I'm gonna go outside and smoke a cig. Think about that. Does anybody even smoke anymore? Just such a terrible habit. I know. Well, I like to smoke. When it comes to theirs, it does. I know you can call. I can think a whole lot more to do than buy it on and put them on something that I'm gonna just burn it up and like in football games. Right, good stuff like that. Although they not have to work extra hard to work that off. Sure that. Hey, you don't look like you have any problems. These kids don't. Once you get on the damn path. Wait. Yeah, you're 5 and 7 and screwed up and break the No problem. Yeah. Can I ask you a question? How did you meet Chris? Huh? Yeah. Close friends, I guess. So, like, talking on the phone, a lot of. Yeah, we called him the phone. So, you got him the tank. And was the tank, yeah. I think you were that guy. When you met over the meeting, it was pretty good. Yeah. Did you ever know? Yeah. Well, like I told you earlier, I'm talking to you now. So is there anybody we can talk to that can get steps off and let me get a smoke or? That dude just left. That's what he's gonna be doing all I'm talking to. Well, I might go outside and smoke one, I guess. What? You might have to go outside and smoke some, so. You ain't got no cigarettes. I have some for long. It's only a matter of time, you know. Who you gonna get cigarettes from? They're coming. So you get little ice cream coming too? Yeah. Like, you know, you got plenty to eat on there. I've got, nothing to eat on, I need none of my soul today. Everybody can just keep eating off my soul. So, for that, I say, fuck y'all. Y'all can eat my shit and die. Try to eat my soul. We both just eat shit and die. When pigs fly, eat shit and die. It's time to reply, You know, I didn't know the times were going to be moving this fast, like the world is very rapidly expanding this quick and moving so quickly. There's going to be people. Yeah. Yeah. Few and far between, but top Monroe County, though. So, just saying. Remember that? What's that? Top Monroe. Top Monroe? Top, yeah, tomorrow's count for everybody in this world. Who's staying with you in the house on 6th Street? Who was? Yeah, Ruby is. Who is? My mom still is. Oh, she just goes out to visit. She just goes out to visit my dad every once in a while, you know. What are you doing? Working on the oil rig? He's working. And how long? He's working for a living. I know you can find anything around here and got that keys. Yeah, it seems to be a lot easier to work out of town than be working in town.
Now, Ranger, now that we've watched the interview that you conducted on the defendant, just a little housekeeping. Now, we heard at times when you had stepped out of the interview room, we heard a third voice. Could you identify who that third voice was?
Officer Logan, Lancaster Police Department.
You questioned the defendant regarding potential drug use. Could you explain to the jury what prompted you to ask those questions?
One reason is I had information from the Rangers who were actively searching his house that there was drug evidence there. So that's one reason. The other reason is the mannerisms and the way that he talked initially to me in the conversation led me to think that I need to start quizzing him about drug activity and those sorts of things. So that was another reason. And then another reason is the fact that the killing occurred. Why would someone, what causes a person to do this? Why? Where's the mind in a killing like this? So it was a natural question for me to ask. And once I initially started asking about it, I immediately just saw the deceptive behavior. So I knew it was a critical issue to explore, and that's what I did.
Now, what deceptive behavior are you referencing that you observed in that interview?
His behavior initially was when asking him about the drug usage was initially in a pause. He's pausing, and then he says yes to the question of using drugs, but calls it tobacco. So it's like a 2-for-1 answer. It's like a yes and a no, and it's like, okay, this seems important. So I started using other methods to find out what it is that he was using. And eventually he would begin to say the things that you've heard sprinkled throughout the interview.
Now, you repeatedly came back to the issue of drugs throughout the interview and got more detail. And ultimately, we heard the defendant state that it could have been formaldehyde with which the marijuana was wet. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
The crime you were investigating at the time was capital murder. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is that an intoxication-based crime?
No, sir.
Did you, in consultation with the district attorney and others, consider whether it was prudent or even feasible to ask a court for a warrant to obtain a sample of the defendant's blood?
That issue was very much discussed, and yes, with the district attorney. And the conclusion was that he had made the omissions that he made, repeatedly talked about the drug usage. There was no reason to doubt that he's lying about that. That's a statement against his own interest. The other thing was the testing and being able to do that, we've discussed. But also voluntary intoxication is not a defense to prosecution. I mean, that's the law.
Could you describe for the jury what that wallet is?
So this wallet is the wallet of Eddie Ralph.
We see a close-up.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Now we'll just exhibit 324. Is this everything from the wallet spread out on the table?
It's not everything from the wallet. There's, yes, that appears to be a number of contents from the wallet, but I can't say that that's all of them.
Okay. Well, exhibit 325. That's some closer up of some of the contents of the wallet.
Yes.
That's exhibit 326. Up the top here, right up here, while my finger is pointing, is that the military ID you were referencing earlier?
Yes, sir.
And is this the Texas identification card?
It is. It is an identification card only.
Okay. Down here, you see something from the employment office.
Yes, sir.
Closer up of his ID and military credentials.
Yes, sir.
What do you recognize that to be?
That is a hunting license
From
the Parks and Wildlife Department.
Okay. Pass the witness.
The text by Chris Kyle to Chad Littlefield that he is straight up nuts was about 2:30 p.m., correct?
Yes, sir.
And the other thing that we know significant now, at 3:15 p.m., Frank Alvarez talks to Chris Kyle in the lobby of the Rough Creek Lodge, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I guess they discussed going up there to the shooting range. But we know that at 3:15 or around that time, that Chris Kyle is talking to Frank Alvarez. They're already at the Rough Creek Lodge, and that Chris gets back in the truck and they proceed up to the firing range. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
We know that at about 5 p.m., that's when the employees of the Rough Creek Lodge, about 5, find the bodies.
Yes,
Correct?
sir. That's my understanding.
And we know that about that same time is when Eddie goes by Uncle James's house in Alvarado. Would that be correct?
Yes, Eddie is at Uncle Watson's house by 5 for sure.
Okay. So that's about the time that they're finding the bodies out at Rough Creek Lodge.
Yes, sir.
5:45, Eddie goes by his sister, Laura Blevins. Is that correct?
That's a possible approximate time frame. I don't think that's exact.
Okay, what, in your investigation, what time would it have been?
Well, it's probably anywhere from 5:30 to 5:50. I mean, it's an approximate.
Okay. It's not out in the ballpark.
No, it's not.
Okay. And then we know that she called 911, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's really the catalyst for the Rangers and the police to know that the suspect is Eddie Ralph, correct?
That's correct.
And we know at 6:50, Eddie is at Taco Bell in Red Oak, Texas, correct?
Yes. He's in the drive-through.
At 7:53, Eddie's sitting over there in front of his house in Chris Kyle's truck with the Lancaster police surrounding him.
That's correct.
And about 8:30 p.m., Eddie is arrested. That's about when the truck pooped out there and the police arrested him. Correct?
I don't know the exact time, but that's relatively close.
You walk into the room to confront Eddie at 11:30 p.m. that night, correct?
Yes. 11:25 is actually when he's in the room and the recording is turned on.
Did you have the information that Laura Blevins, the sister, when she called 911, she was hysterical? Did you get that information?
I got Laura Blevins' sworn statement when I arrived to the Lancaster police station, read her statement and her husband's statement, Gaines.
Well, what I'm talking about, Ranger Riley, is when she made that telephone call, 911, and she said, Eddie has been by here, he's psychotic. Did you have that information?
No, sir. Well, I did see a TV that was already, showing comments on television. So I had that information, but not the 911 call.
Did you have the information that she had told 911, Eddie told her, I had to take their souls before they took mine? Did you have that information?
I didn't exactly have the dictated version of the 911 call, but I did have a sworn statement that contained the information that she provided police and rangers.
But that's accurate information, isn't it?
I believe that's accurate.
And did you testified that you were listening as Eddie was talking back and forth with Lancaster police, correct?
That's correct.
And that was mainly a conversation he was having with Jesse Chavera, the detective, correct?
I actually don't know which officers he was talking to. I do know that that is one detective that was there on the scene.
So did you have the information at that point in time that Eddie was saying things like, I don't know who I can trust anymore, Jesse? Did you have that information?
I didn't have that particular. No, I did not have that.
Did you have the information that he was telling them there's no trust in this world anymore? Did you have that information?
I don't recall that one.
Did you have the information that during the time that he was talking to the Lancaster police, He's told them, what's my job in society right now? I don't know what it is. Is it to kill all the people who are doing bad in the world? Did you have that information?
No, sir.
Did you have the information that he told the Lancaster police, it's just happening so fast, I don't know if I'm going insane? Did you have that information?
No, sir.
Did you have the information that he told the Lancaster police, is this about like hell walking on earth right now? Did you have that information?
No, sir.
Did you have the information that he told the Lancaster police, I've been trying to have faith all day, and right now I just don't know what's right or wrong in the world? Did you have that?
I didn't have any of those versions dictated to me.
Did you have the information that he said, is it voodoo?
No, sir.
Did you have the information that he told the Lancaster police, I've been watching it on the news for weeks, or 2 or 3 days now, anarchy has been killing the world? Did you have that information?
No, sir.
Did you have the information that when he was with the Lancaster police out there, he said, these last 3 days, everything's getting so crazy around here, I don't know what to do? Did you have that information?
No, sir.
Did you have the information that he told them, is the apocalypse on top of us right now? Did you have that information?
No, sir.
Did you have the information that he told them, I don't understand who I can trust anymore, I can't hold anybody accountable for it?
No, sir. No.
Did you have the information he told Jesse Chavera, the detective, I can feel everybody beating on my soul a while ago, that was not good? Did you have that information?
No, sir.
Did you have the information that he told them, I've been having panic attacks all day, I don't know what's happening in the world right now? Did you have any of that information when you were on your drive from Rough Creek Lodge to Lancaster?
The information I had was that he had anti-government views and a possible drug problem.
Okay, so you didn't have all of that information.
That's correct.
Did you, you were on the phone with the Lancaster police though at the time, correct?
Yes.
And what were y'all discussing?
Well, I was on the phone listening to the negotiations with Eddie Routh, and I was only hearing one side of it from the Lancaster police, and this is from an open phone that I'm listening to this with. So I had that I heard, but the meetings and the information that I learned about Eddie beyond that point was actually at the Lancaster Police Department when the Lancaster officers met with me, Rangers met with me, and all those involved in assisting us with the investigation.
While you were driving over there to Lancaster from the Rough Creek Lodge, and according to your testimony, you were gathering this information about Eddie. I believe you gathered some information that he was a sharpshooter and a combat veteran, correct?
I did not gather that at that time. That was early on in the investigation where things were being told that maybe weren't exactly accurate, that he's a sharpshooter and that he's a combat vet, and these sorts of things were flying around. Some of it's from unknown sources.
What's a BOLO?
It's a notification to the surrounding officers in Texas that, hey, this is the information we have right now, and use caution. This is all we know at this point.
Be on the lookout.
Yes,
You put in there, be on the lookout. He's a marksman and a combat vet.
I did put that out. Yes.
Did you also have information at that point in time, since you were gathering it, that he had been released from the VA hospital 8 days before this incident? Did you have that information?
I had information that he had some problems with the Lancaster police, that he was suicidal.
No, that's not, yeah. But what I asked you is, did you have information at that point in time that he had been released from the VA hospital 8 days before this incident?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you have information that he had been diagnosed as a psychotic state of mind, with a psychotic mental illness by the VA hospital 8 days before this?
No, sir, I did not.
Did you know that he had gone to the Green Oaks Hospital prior to being admitted to the VA hospital? Did you know that?
Not at that time.
Did you know at that point in time that he had been prescribed antipsychotic medication by the VA hospital?
No, sir.
Did you know that they found, that your rangers found antipsychotic medication in his home when they searched him?
I knew there was medication in there, but exactly what it was used to how it was used to treat him, I was not aware of that.
Did you have information that prior September he had been admitted to the VA hospital and been diagnosed with a psychosis? Did you have that information?
No, sir.
Did you have information that prior to that, in July of 2011, he had been admitted to the VA hospital and diagnosed with a psychosis? Did you know that?
No, sir.
Did you know in August of 2011 that he had been admitted to the VA hospital and diagnosed with a psychosis, and in each of those times been prescribed antipsychotic medication? Did you know that?
No, sir.
When you sat down and talked to Eddie, you didn't know anything about his prior trip to the VA hospital or his prior diagnosis of psychosis or prior prescription medication for antipsychotic medication, did you?
That's correct.
You thought you were dealing with somebody who was being philosophical, didn't you?
Not just that. I was well aware of some strange, weird behavior. And in fact,
Did you know about did you talk to Officer Salazar with the Lancaster Police Department about what Eddie was saying after his arrest? Did you know any of that?
no, sir. As I stated, I had information of anti-government views and possible drug problem. The details of what he had told officers was limited.
But you go in and y'all talk about it, it's a rough time, correct?
That's correct.
And you tell him that, I just want to sit here and visit and talk to you about it and see what I can do. That's what you tell him when you're interrogating him, correct?
Yes, sir.
And he asked you about taking off his handcuffs, and you said, I'll talk about it. And then he volunteers without being asked a question. He said, me too, I need to find out more about the world I've been living in too. I never knew I was in this deep when I was in Iraq. I never thought I mean, you can look at the screen, it doesn't make sense to you at the time, then you realize what's happening, you know? You're like, it's like astonishing, you know? Is that what he said to you?
He did say that.
And so you go, well, we'll go from there. You didn't ask him to explain or what he meant by that. You just went right into reading his Miranda rights, correct?
I responded to everything that he said. And when I needed to direct the topic on what we needed to be talking about, I did so.
And so you read him his Miranda warnings, which are the typical, right to remain silent, anything you say can be used against you in court. And then you ask him, you understand all that. I go around and talk to people. When you asked him if he understood his rights, he said, I never knew that counsel was more, counseling between men and women needed to be more heavy in the world than it did. But when you're all surrounded by all fronts, when it begins, you can't just start in one place, you know? That doesn't make any sense, does it?
It's some of that, what I've already discussed, that I don't have a clear understanding of everything that he's saying or why he's saying it, more importantly.
But it just doesn't make any sense, does it?
It seems nonsensical.
Right. And so you just don't even go into it. You say, well, you understand those rights. You're okay with talking with me. And his response to that is, I've been living with someone with their hand up my ass my whole life, you know? I'm not okay. That's not right. And you respond, with somebody doing that to you. And Eddie says, so sad how it had to happen and stuff. How it did happen. I just wish it was stopped, you know? Aren't there world councils that can speak about this? And you tell him, well, there has to be. Do you know what world councils he was talking about?
I don't know for sure. I mean, he could be talking about important people, but that this is trying to guess what he's talking about.
That wasn't an answer to your question, though, was it?
No, like I said, he oftentimes would not answer the question.
Well, then you say, he tells you that there have to be councils to keep people accountable. And stuff like this that people do, they can't walk on the ground with you. They can't walk on the same ground with you. You know what I mean? And you say, right. And I assume you're just playing along with him. Correct?
Yeah, and this is all at the initial stages of the interview, and I'm certainly going along with whatever he's going to talk about, and I'm going to grab a hold of whatever themes he's talking about, and then develop a plan to get down to the truth.
He's just not making any sense, is he?
That's true.
And you tell him, I want you to know I work for the Texas Rangers, and what we do is we investigate major crimes, homicides. We have all the resources that we utilize to look into these cases. You understand what I'm saying? And he says, right. And you say, and I know what you went through today has been very difficult for you. I want to talk about what happened. And you can start when you woke up today and what happened. And his answer was, well, I keep talking to Chris, you know. I keep talking to Chris's in my world. Seems like every time I talk to another man named Chris, I get sent to another man named Chris. That didn't make any sense either, did it?
Yeah, that's some of the denial that I'm talking about. Denial.
It's denial.
Yes, denial avoidance.
He says, every time I talk to another man named Chris, I get sent, He says, I think about talking to the war, the one in the sky. I think about fighting through the war, you know. Did you ask him what he meant by that?
No, he likes, for my investigation, to say shocking things.
Well, that just didn't make sense, though, the wolf in the sky.
Yeah, he says things that are to him means something.
So he goes on and says, the ones in the sky are the ones that fly. You know what I mean? The pigs in the world, they can truly say they're pigs. I've been smelling it this whole time. I'm tired of everyone's fucking bullshit. I can smell bullshit and pig shit, you know? I can tell the difference between two different kinds of pig shit. I don't know how you can smell your shit. I'm not saying anybody's shit stinking, but shit stinking, you know what I mean? Y'all hadn't talked about any pigs or anything like that, had you?
We had not.
So you don't respond to any of that. You say, and what exactly happened today after you woke up? And Eddie responds, look, I'm finally getting rest, peace of my mind, you know, peace of my mind back that I won't ever get back. That wasn't an answer to what happened after you woke up, was it?
That's correct.
And you ask him, what kind of education do you have? And he responds, just high school. I went to high school, then I went and joined the Marine Corps right out of high school. And he continues, it wasn't the streets that I was trying for, it was the streets I was trying to come back and get, you know? The streets have not been straight in Texas forever, you know what I mean? No town square. There's towns that are square and there's towns that are fixed. There's no real square town, there can be. There's square towns around America. There could be prairie towns. There was no response by you, correct? I mean, you didn't ask him, what the heck are you talking about, straight towns or square towns?
Did you say prairie towns a minute ago? Because he refers to crooked towns, square towns and crooked towns.
Okay. But that wasn't an answer to your question, was it?
It was a philosophical talk, and he's still avoiding talking about what we're there to talk about at that point.
That's your opinion.
That is my opinion.
So what did you do in the Marine Corps, you asked? I worked as a prison guard and I worked on guns, you know, tit for tat. He continued, who's saying who's right and who's wrong? Nobody wants to admit that they're right. Nobody wants to admit that they're wrong. I'm the only one that can change it. That's why these are behind my back right now, referring to as handcuffs. That philosophical? In your mind?
He's just not answering the question.
Okay. Then you talk about how he met Chris, and he says he was protecting the schools, you know. He responds, when I finally met the guy, I could smell him for what he's worth. I was like, you didn't ask him what he meant by that, did you?
It seemed like he's angry. You know, he's angry at that point about Chris.
When he said I could smell him for what he's worth, he was referring to Chris Kyle, wasn't he?
In this part of the investigation, that's true, and then we've heard the same towards Chad.
And then he says he was a Kyle. Doesn't remember the other guy's name. Then a little later, he asked her, just a few seconds later, he said, what kind of shooting sport? He responds, well, I imagine they're headhunters, you know, trying to hurt everybody down who did them wrong before, hit them all, or something like that. I'm not trying to hunt down anybody what I did wrong, or you. Did you ask me what he meant by calling them headhunters?
I didn't feel I needed to. It appeared to me he's setting himself up for a self-defense.
Okay. Y'all talk about y'all are both reasonable, normal. And you ask him, what happened out there today? Shooting sports, what kind of guns? And he responds, I was being reasonable with these boys. They looked me in the eyes and I looked them in the eyes. Is that correct?
That's what he says.
Okay. And then you ask him, what happened to them from your perspective, correct? You want to know what his perspective of the situation was, didn't you?
Yes.
And he responds, well, I can't just keep eating my soul up about this, you know? You can't just keep letting people eat your soul up for free, you know? It's not what it's about. It's about having a soul that you have in you for yourself. I've still got tons of people that are eating on my soul right now. I haven't been able to sleep because I've been waiting for them to come back and get my soul. You know how that feels? That doesn't really make a lot of sense either, does it, Ray Brown?
He's talking about you know, he's having a rough time. You know, things aren't good in his life, and there's a few other explicitives other words that you left out. But he's having a rough time, or at least that's what he's conveying to me at that point.
And you respond by telling him, I'm understanding. And he says, I just wish the world wasn't such a soulless place, you know? Sometimes there's no soul for the soup. or something about sleep anymore and writing down books. That didn't make a whole lot of sense either, did it?
No, sir.
And you say, well, tell me what happened out there when you were with Chris and that other guy. And his response, and that's a pretty straightforward question, isn't it?
It
Tell me
is.
what happened.
Yes.
Well, you know, he said, I've seen evidently something about the Reds are eating up all the Indians. The Communist Party wants to run rampant in America. Talks about common ground work to do so we can all get better. It has to be common ground. Then he says the warlords are not very happy with me. I know that. Everybody knows that in town. I can start making things right. I mean, obviously. You asked him what he meant by the warlords?
I did not.
You just said, oh, you saw your sister today. You told her something bad happened, right? What'd you tell her? Then you asked him that.
I did.
Okay. His response was, I told her I had to kill men today. I had to kill men today was his response, correct?
Yes.
It wasn't a want to, it was a need to. I had to get out of that situation I was in today. If not, I was going to be the next one out there getting my head shot completely off, you know. That was what he told you, he told his sister, correct?
That's correct.
Y'all talked about the caliber of gun and it was a 9. Did you ask him, what did you do with that gun? And he tells me it's out in the truck. When I pulled back into town, I didn't feel like I could talk to Jesse or anybody like that. Nobody wanted to talk to me about what was right to do. Everyone wants to do right things, but nobody wants me to pay for it. I know it's right. Everyone wanting to live for free on these farms that are high fence and stuff and shoot for a living. I can't keep shooting for a living. That didn't make any sense, did it?
That's just his statements.
I understand. You asked him how many times you shoot a day, he says a couple of few. Talk about how close you were, I was right up close. Then you asked, well, who did you shoot first? The one, he told you, the one I could identify with better, you know, clearly identified. I knew if I did not take out his soul, he was coming to take my neck. Or something like his was sure gangster gonna take one of my souls, one of his kid gangsters. I'm just tired of playing chess with my life. It is not about playing with chess pieces in life. I mean, it is about playing with chess pieces in life, obviously. The chess holds the power. Did you ask him what he meant by any of that?
I did not.
Then you talk about some drugs, and he said he used some tobacco. I assume that's when you say he's avoiding the issue, correct?
When what happens?
When you ask him, was there a time today you did any drugs, used any drugs?
Yes, he's actually kind of engaging in blocking at this point when his response is, and you can watch it on the video, yeah, I did use some tobacco today. That's his first answer.
And then he tells you, you ask him in some other kind of drug, that's true, right? And he says, pure adrenaline, I guess. I've been running on pure adrenaline for a couple of days now straight. This is the first time I got to feel safe up here at the police station with more police around me. That's what he told you, wasn't it?
Yes, he did.
He felt safe at the police department because there were police around.
That's what he said.
Yeah, you asked him if he'd done some methamphetamine, and he emphatically denies that, doesn't he?
He does.
And after that, he explains to you that that's why I have been having such a hard time sleeping, because I haven't been taking drugs. I can't sleep at night. Who can sleep in that world? The Sandman winning always. I tell you, what I know is right to get out the front door, but it just keeps coming back in my ass to bite me some more. Did you ask me what he meant by that?
No, I figured out what he meant by that.
But you didn't ask me.
That's correct.
And then you asked me some more about, have you ever used methamphetamine before? And he looked for a while and he said, drugs are what brings us into these wars. I know it is anyway. It's about what drugs can get done fastest by the quickest drug lord. It's not about that. It is, you know, you can eat souls. You can never make any more after one true soul is gone. Once all the true souls are gone, you're fucked. That was his response to that, wasn't it?
Yes.
You asked him about what time they get to the gun range. What did you do after you killed them? And he said, fled. I didn't know what else to do, did he?
He did say that.
My adrenaline was so high, I didn't know what was right or wrong. Then he says, I knew what was right. I left, you know. So he thought he was doing the right thing at that point in time, didn't he?
I would disagree with that.
But that's what he said, didn't he?
You can read that two different ways, but I disagree with that.
Okay. Well, and again, it's in evidence. The jury can form their own conclusion, but that's what he said.
Yes.
I knew what was right. I left, you know. Correct?
Yes.
Said he felt like the vehicle was pretty much given to him, correct?
Yeah, he said it like that.
And so, you asked him, do you feel bad? Excuse me. And he said, yes, sir. Said, you know what you did today was wrong, right? Do you understand that? He said, yes, I do, correct?
Yes.
Went up above it. He had already said what he felt he was doing was right, didn't he?
Yeah, I know it was right now that I left, you know. He says that.
Then you ask him, what do you think should happen? And he said, I couldn't keep it, covering it up forever. And that's the reason you knew it was wrong, you asked him. He said, I knew there was certain shit wrong about it. Wasn't that his response?
Yes, it was.
And you said that certain shit was killing. You knew it was wrong, right? And he goes, right. And you knew driving away, taking that truck was wrong. And where did you drive after that? And he said, well, if it was so right, he asked you if he should have just stayed, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
And you told him, well, you shouldn't have done it in the first place. Then y'all talk about the marijuana that's so prevalent. You asked him about, do you know what was in the bong? Truth or not, I don't know. Do you know? You have to be truthful with me if it wasn't just be truthful. You asked him what was in that bong. And he says, I imagine there was some pot too, a little bit of pot. Still, you can't trust anything in Texas with weed in it because it's usually laced with different drugs, laced up tight with different drugs. Correct?
He says it in other terms, but he's talking about the drugs being laced up and that you can't trust what you're receiving.
And then you asked him what, and he said probably some of that wet, or I don't know, it could have been anything, didn't
He did say that.
He didn't say, said it could be anything. And you say, what do you mean by that? It could have been wet. And he said, any kind of particular, the drug was put in weed. And you say, are you being truthful with me? And he says, yes, sir, I smoked a little bit today. I've been trying to relax. The only thing that was helping me was pot, helping me. And now I've got so many abandonment issues and trust issues here, I don't know what the fuck to think, I've been having these problems since I growed up, since a boy. I try to fix what is wrong with our country right now. That doesn't make any sense either, does it?
That's correct, and you skipped some portions, but that, yes.
What did I skip?
I asked him where did he get it, referring to the drugs,
Oh, yeah.
and his response was, "I haven't bought any in a while."
Right. Okay.
And then there was more discussion about have you used it today.
Then you want to know about what you guys talk about. You asked them, tell me what they said to you. And his answer was, you can't walk around as a common man in a world of mistakes. That didn't make any sense either to that question, did it?
It might make sense to him and people who know him,
Okay.
not necessarily to me at the time.
And you asked him, is that what they told you? And he answered, if that's the way the world sees me now, it's a mistake. I'm not a mistake. I'm tired of missing out on my life because of this shit. That wasn't an answer to what they told you, was it?
That's correct.
Did you know Chris Kyle before this incident?
Just knew of him, not personally.
Didn't know him personally?
That's correct.
Okay. And then you say, well, tell me what these guys told you. And he says, well, they were telling me about, stuff they've done, stuff they experienced, stuff I'd already seen on the other side of the pond. And you said, you have? And he said, yeah, I came back to this one, and it's happening more and more rampant, even more here in Lancaster than anywhere. Did you ask him what the happening was that he meant?
I agreed, just listened to him at that point. I didn't ask him a question. I did interpret what he said.
Did they talk? He told you that they talked to me pretty shitty about it. Pretty shitty, correct? And that neither side was being nice about it, And that you talked to him about target practicing. Y'all talk about, there was a bunch about the guns that were out there. He said there were a bunch of others out there. I never shot any of the targets though. And you say, well, the bunches of other guns you mentioned, did you shoot anything with them? No, I left them where they were. What we're meant to be here for is hunting for purpose, Did you ask me what he meant by that?
I did not.
That didn't make any sense though, did it?
It's strange.
Then he asked me where did he shoot him, referring to Chad, and he doesn't answer. He talks about if he can see his parents, correct?
Yes.
And he says, I'd like to see him, at least hug my mom one last time. And you say, do you want to hug your mom? Do you want to do that because you know you did wrong today? And there's no answer. You immediately ask, you shot Chad and Chris, right? And he goes, yeah, correct?
Correct.
And you ask, you feel bad about that. What's your date of birth again? Because he doesn't answer. He answers, I gotta get these cuffs off the back of my neck before I keep strangling my own damn self. The walls aren't that thick in here or heavy. You know what I mean? And you say, well, I know what you mean. But obviously, we don't know what he means by that, do we?
Yeah, I mean, it's just he's talking in what we have learned is Eddie being Eddie. He's talking about the handcuffs being behind his back. It can cause like a strain on your neck when you've had handcuffs behind you that long. So for a person to say, you know, they're about to choke or it's hurting their neck or, you know, whatever the words were he used, it's really not that far from being what any of us would say.
And especially about the walls ain't that thick in here or heavy, you know what I mean?
Yeah, he's showing his anger at that point, in my opinion.
And he asked him, is there anything you'd like to say to the family? He said, yeah, I'm sorry for what I've done, you know, we can work this out. And you leave the room and come back and you come back and ask him a few more questions and you say, okay, all right, let me ask you this. You have stated to me that you would like to say you're sorry for what you've done to the families. What would you say to them if you had the opportunity to talk to them right now? And he answers you, I tell them I'm so sorry for what I've done. If I could have done it differently, I would have done it so much differently, correct?
Yes, that was said.
Okay. Then you ask him about the clothes that he's wearing, and he tells you that the clothes he had on was what he was wearing at the gun range, correct?
Yes,
That he didn't change clothes, right?
that's correct.
Then you go back to the subject of the marijuana. And you ask him, can you think what that marijuana was laced with? Wet, what was it wet with? And he says, probably some purple, and do you know what he said, purple what?
Purple Hearts.
Purple hearts. And what are purple hearts?
There's different terms out there on the street. There's purple haze, there's purple hearts, could mean LSD, is what purple hearts could mean. There's also purple haze meaning the same thing. So it depends on who you're talking to on the street as to the real identification of drugs.
Could have been just a grade of marijuana.
It could have been.
And you say after that, well, was it formaldehyde? And he said it could have been formaldehyde. That's what we did, you know. And then you step out of there. Besides that, there is absolutely no evidence of any kind of marijuana laced with anything that you found.
Yeah, the only evidence I have in regards to his drug usage is the admissions that he makes in the video.
Okay, in other words, you didn't find, they found a little marijuana in his house, correct?
That's correct. There was marijuana, there was drug paraphernalia, items of that nature, but
And there's no formaldehyde in there, is there?
my understanding is there was no foreign substance detected in the lab reports.
So when we talk about all this formaldehyde, number one, there is no evidence of formaldehyde, is there?
Well, as I stated, the admissions that he makes on tape speak for themselves. The evidence that we do have, I believe you've seen that.
And Uncle James said that the stuff that they smoked earlier that morning, it was just good marijuana. Are you aware of that?
I'm aware. I interviewed James like 5 or 6 times.
Okay. you end up asking him, you know the difference between right and wrong, and he says, yes, sir, correct?
That's correct.
And then you talk about the blood on his shoes. So that was about the complete interview, wasn't it, Ranger Brown?
You skipped a large portion, but those are accurate. Yes, sir.
Okay. So all those things that we covered, all those statements by Eddie, in your opinion, he was just dodging the questions, just being evasive?
Well, my opinion is that the way it starts out is strange and weird. Obviously, there was indications that he was being deceptive, but there were some unusual statements, statements that don't really surprise me either, coming from someone that may be under the influence of a drug or alcohol or some other substance.
Well, let's get to that. Did you smell alcohol on him?
No, sir, I did not.
And you were close to him, weren't you?
I was.
So you didn't smell a bit of alcohol, did you?
That's correct.
And as far as this drug usage is concerned, there was a judge at the Lancaster Police Department, wasn't there?
Yes.
That judge signed, he was there to sign a search warrant for Eddie's house, correct?
That is correct.
And to get a search warrant for a person's blood is a very easy thing to do, isn't it?
It's not difficult.
It's just a matter of writing out a little probable cause affidavit, which the judge reads and issues the warrant, and a blood sample is taken from Eddie's arm and taken to a lab to test for drugs, correct?
A blood warrant can be obtained with probable cause. You have to have that first.
Well, you certainly had probable cause to get a search warrant for his blood, didn't you?
I had his admissions of what he had stated he had done. And with regard to the statements that he had made, the probability is that you would get a negative result for those types of foreign substances versus getting the fact that, no, I'm just telling you from my experience that we probably could have gotten cannabis, as a response on a blood draw. But again, his admissions, we discussed, myself and the district attorney,
What admissions are you talking about?
those that are contained in the interview.
But which one?
All of them.
Well, he admitted he might have smoked some marijuana, correct?
Yes.
And that's it, correct?
There's other things that he says with regard to drug usage. All of it should be considered.
Well, are you insinuating that there's other evidence of drug usage besides marijuana?
Yes. I mean, that this is what he says.
Where?
It's in the interview.
Point it out to me in the interview.
Well, and what exactly do you want pointed out?
Where he made an admission of using any other drug besides marijuana that day. You said it was in there. I asked you to point it out to me, please.
What he says is it's possible that what he used was laced with something. He also says that it could have been formaldehyde.
Well,
So
but that's, we're talking about, you said if you took a blood test, that probably would be negative results, correct?
that's my understanding, is that probably would be the case.
Well, why would it be negative results?
That's a question for the chemist.
Well, but what, you said you all sat around and discussed whether or not to take a blood test for Megan, and that you decided no, and then you testified that it would have probably been a negative result. What do you mean? What do you base that on?
My experience in training with this.
Okay, but why would it have been a negative result?
That's a question for the chemist.
Well, all you would have had to have done, Randy Riley, was write out a probable cause affidavit. Judge is sitting right there, get a warrant, take a sample of his blood, and test it so that people over here would know for sure whether or not there was any drugs in his system. Isn't that correct?
There's what substances were in his body that could be tested by a lab. Those results would become available through that.
We would let a chemist decide whether or not there were any drugs in his body, wouldn't we?
A chemist could tell you about drug testing, blood testing, and what you can expect to find or not find.
And so we have a capital murder where you don't want to leave any stone unturned, correct? That's proper police procedure, isn't it?
Professional investigation, of course.
Yeah, thorough investigation. You want to make sure that every T is crossed and I is dotted, don't you?
Yes.
And all you had to do, with a judge sitting right there across the hall, is get a sample of his blood, and we would know for sure, wouldn't we?
No, sir.
Why not?
I've stated your questions need to go before a chemist with regard to what could and couldn't be. I can tell you that we could get a warrant, but again, the questions of these other foreign substances and what you can expect to find in his blood, in his body, would be better suited for a chemist.
But if a chemist doesn't have the sample of blood, they can't tell us, can they?
That's true.
And they don't have that sample of blood because you didn't get it, did you?
That's true.
Now, let me ask you, you mentioned that you thought he was trying to set up a self-defense issue, correct?
Yes.
And under our law, a person is entitled to use force against another person. In other words, self-defense. If in his mind, it is to prevent another person's use of unlawful force against him. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you're entitled to use deadly force against another if you, in your mind, think that that other person is going to use deadly force against you. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And what we use in self-defense is a reasonable person standard, correct?
Yes.
And what we also have in our law is even if the reasonable person believes that there is a apparent danger, then they're entitled to use self-defense, correct?
Objection, Your Honor. The law is imminent, not apparent.
And otherwise not engaged in criminal activity. Yes.
It is apparent, correct?
Did you get a ruling on the objection?
Overruled.
The question is run that by me again. Sorry.
Well, if the danger is in a reasonable person's mind, if that danger is simply an apparent danger to them, then they're entitled to use self-defense.
A reasonable person can use self-defense when they're justified,
Well,
but that's not even decided here. I mean, it's got to be decided by others under a reasonable person standard.
well, I understand that, but my point is that an apparent danger can be defended just as much as a real danger. That's our law. Correct?
I haven't seen the words apparent danger within the law.
Well, have you studied the penal code?
Yes.
Okay. Have you never heard that an apparent danger can be defended just as much as a real danger?
I would concede that a reasonable person, when justified, can use deadly force.
Thanks, Rick, for all help. That's me.
Yes, sir.
Redirect, Your Honor.
You may.
Under the reasonable person standard that is used for self-defense, does that include shooting unarmed people in the back?
No, sir.
Was the defendant able to recall specific details about the trip out to the gun range?
Yes, he was.
In fact, you asked him, and where did they take you? And his response was, we drove down to the country out there, and we went and did some shooting sports, you know.
Objecting to leading his witness.
Overrule.
I'll repeat it. You asked him, and then where did they take you? Was his response, we drove down to the country out there, and then we went and did some shooting sports, you know.
Yes.
Now, did he also recall details regarding the murder weapon he had used on one or more of Chad Littlefield and Chris Kyle?
Yes, he did.
How did he describe the murder weapon?
He accurately described the murder weapon as a 6-hour 9mm, which is the exact caliber that, of course, we seized.
When asked by you, how many times did you shoot them today? Was his response, a couple few?
That was his response.
And he repeated, a couple few shots were fired.
Yes.
And you asked, how close were you to them? Was his response, I was right up close to them?
Yes, that was his response.
Now, you asked them, or you asked the defendant, did they know you were going to shoot them? Did he give a visible response to that on the video?
There was no audible. He did not answer initially. What page are you on?
19. Question was, did they know you were going to shoot them?
What he did was very telling at this point. He does not audibly answer, and he shakes his head no.
And then you confirmed that by they didn't know. And did he give another inaudible answer?
He did.
And then you asked, why do you think that? And what was his response?
His response was, because their training wasn't as good. My training's been better. You know my life.
How did you take that response?
His mind is with clarity. He remembers a very fine detail of this crime. His mind is with clarity. He's not insane, in my opinion, at this point.
Now, we're looking at a transcript here. Is that right?
That's correct.
And it's based on the video.
Yes.
Now, get to the bottom of page 22 of your transcript. Did the defendant remember details about what time things occurred out at the gun range?
Yes.
In fact, at the bottom of page 22, you asked him about what time did this happen today out there at the gun range. What was his response?
His response was maybe around 2 o'clock or so.
And you asked him, and after you killed them, what did you do? Next, did he state that he fled?
He did.
Was the word fled his term or yours?
His terms.
You asked him, what did you do with the gun that you had? I mean, did you take it with you into the vehicle and then drive away? And there's no audible answer. What did you perceive his answer to be based on his head gestures?
Well, that it was guilt is what I could see. He's not responding to a very important question that he knows the answer to.
And then you said, is that a yes? To which you got another non-audible answer.
That's correct.
And then you asked, did you feel bad for doing that? Another non-audible answer.
Correct.
And you say, yes, question mark?
That's correct.
And what's his response to that?
He finally says, yes, sir.
And you say, thank you. You know what you did today is wrong, right? You understand that? And what was his response?
Yes, sir.
Was he under any compulsion at that point to say, yes, sir?
He was not.
And you asked him, what do you think should happen? What was his response?
His response was, nothing can keep covering it up forever.
And then you asked him, that's the reason you fled, right? Because you knew it was wrong. What was his response?
Well, I knew there was certain shit that was wrong about it. It was his response.
And then you asked, some of that certain shit was killing them. You know that was wrong, right? And what was his response?
Right.
And you asked, and you knew driving away, taking that truck was wrong. Did he respond to that?
He did not.
And where did you drive after that? What was his response?
Well, if I was so right, should I just stayed?
And then you say, are you asking me, should you have stayed? And there's no audible answer.
Correct.
Right? And you stated to him, yes, you shouldn't have done it in the first place. You know these men, they're heroes. What was his response?
Right.
Your question to him was, you understand that? Ultimate heroes. And his response was what?
Right.
Did he have an opportunity there to explain to you that, no, they were trying to kill me?
Yes, he did.
Did he say that?
He did not.
In fact, based on your investigation, you didn't know this at the time, I'm assuming, when you did this interview. Have you learned more about how the crime was carried out at the scene?
Yes.
Through autopsy reports and other things?
Yes.
Does the evidence that you have reviewed show that these two men were shot in the back?
Yes.
And does it also show that Chad Littlefield was shot in the top of the head such that the exit wound came out the base of his neck?
Yes.
Now, you've taken classes on crime scene reconstruction, have you not?
Yes, I have.
Is it possible for a man the height of Eddie Ralph to shoot a man the height of Chad Littlefield in the top of the head, straight down, while he is standing up?
No.
Is it your opinion that Chad Littlefield was down on the ground when that shot was fired to his head?
He was.
When Chad Littlefield had guns in the back of him and was down on the ground, was he in any danger to anyone, including this defendant?
No.
Now, continuing on page 25, you'd asked him, you understand that ultimate heroes, and he had agreed with you, right? And you stated they've been protecting you and me. And his response was what?
For a while now.
And you say for a long while. And his response was?
A lot longer than I was thinking.
You ask him, I don't know. You know, you have to be truthful with me. If it wasn't, just be truthful. What was in that bong? What was his response?
His response was, I imagine some, and a pause, there's probably some pot in there too, you know.
He had initially denied that there was any drugs in that bong, had he not?
That's correct.
He nodded his head, but he said tobacco.
Yes.
Right? And then you press him on it, and he finally admits that it was marijuana,
Yes.
pot.
Yes.
And then you ask him, what else? And what was his response?
Shit, you can't trust anything in Texas with weed in it because it's usually laced up so fucking tight with different drugs.
Let me ask you your what you were looking at when you were investigating this case. Is capital murder an intoxication crime?
It is not.
Driving while intoxicated. An element of the offense is being intoxicated, correct?
That's correct.
Vehicular homicide or intoxication manslaughter by running your car into somebody and killing them. That's an intoxication crime, right?
That's correct.
Is capital murder an intoxication crime?
It is not.
Is intoxication a defense to capital murder?
It is not.
You say if yours was laced, what do you think it would have been laced with? And his response was?
Probably some of that wet, or I don't know. It could have been anything.
So he says probably some of that wet, right?
Yes.
And on the previous page, he had said with weed in it, but shit, you can't trust anything in Texas with weed in it because it's usually laced up, Laced up so effing tight with different drugs. That was Eddie's word, right?
Yes.
You state the question to the defendant. The men that you killed, how were they helping you today when they were talking to you? What was his response?
Talked to me pretty shitty. Talked to me pretty shitty about it, pretty shitty.
Now, you've worked a lot of homicides over the years, have you not?
Yes, sir.
It seems unfathomable to the normal person, but have you worked murders where being personally offended was the motive for committing the murder?
Yes.
Would it seem out of line based on your training experience that they talk pretty shitty to me would be a motive for committing murder?
Well, for a motive, it's possible one portion of or one reason, as far as in the mind. But all I'm getting from that is some anger.
He was angry with them.
Yes.
And sometimes people murder people because they're angry with them. Is that right?
That's true.
You had asked the defendant about whether he'd done any target practicing that day. Was he able to recall details about the type of weapon and what he did as far as the sport shooting that was going on?
Yes.
What did he recall?
He said they loaded a .45 and he shot it. And we talked about what kind of distance that he shot at. And yeah, he said it wasn't far, but I still hit my mark when I was needing to hit my mark true.
Did he appear to be familiar with the weapons he was using?
Very familiar, yes.
Fact. In your analysis of the crime scene and the autopsy reports, do you believe the defendant was proficient in the use of firearms?
Yes.
You ask, was the other guy named Chad, and what was his response?
Yeah, was his response.
And your next question to him was, you remember that to be true, right? And his answer was?
Yeah.
And your question was, where did you shoot him? And what was his response to that?
No response. Long pause, nothing.
Followed by?
Is there a way I can see my parents yet? Did they make it in yet?
He never answered you about where he had shot Chad, did he?
That's correct.
Based on your training and experience in interviewing, what did that indicate to you?
He knows where he shot Chad. He knows, and he doesn't want to say.
And what do you now know to be the answer to where he shot Chad?
He shot him in the head,
And?
the face,
And?
the back.
The defendant asked you, can you talk out there and see if they've heard from them referencing his parents? Is that right?
That's correct.
You say sure.
Yes.
And what statement does he make after that?
I think I'd like to see them to see if I could at least hug my mom one last time,
And you then asked him, you want to do that because you know what you did was wrong today. You shot Chad and Chris, right? And what was his response?
He's physically uncomfortable at that point with a very long pause, and then he states, "Yep."
You ask the defendant, is there anything you'd like to say to the families? And his response was,
"Yeah, I'm just sorry for what I've done. We can work this out."
you ask the question, what did they do after you shot them? Can you explain that to me? What was his response?
They, and a pause, they laid there and they weren't breathing anymore. And that was it.
And then you ask him, what time did that happen? What was his response?
The 3 o'clock or so.
So he remembered the time that they weren't breathing anymore.
Yes, he was close on his time frame.
Are you saying that his timeline was pretty accurate?
It's pretty close for all that had occurred. Their check-in at 3:15. He's saying that it happened at 3.
You say, all right, let me ask you this. You have stated to me that you would like to say you're sorry for what you've done. What is Ralph's response?
Right.
You say, like to the families, what would you say to them if you had an opportunity to talk to them right now? And what was his response?
His response was, "I'd tell them I was so sorry for what I'd done. And if I could have done it differently, I'd have done it so much differently. I just wish these handcuffs weren't on me."
So he's sorry, but he sure wishes he could get rid of the handcuffs
Yes.
because he's uncomfortable.
Yes.
You ask, can you think of what that marijuana was laced with? What is it wet with? And his response was,
Probably some Purple Hearts,
Now, when I first heard that, I thought that was some sort of military reference. You, based on your training experience, know Purple Hearts to be what?
Well, it could mean military and it could mean drugs.
Is that a term used in the drug world?
Yes.
Do people outside the drug world familiar with the terms Purple Hearts in connection with wet marijuana?
Probably not.
You just ask him point blank. And you know the difference between right and wrong, right? And what was his response?
Yes, sir.
You're talking about when he fled from the police, right?
Yes.
And you asked him, why weren't you complying? Because of what happened? How did he respond?
No response.
And then you say, okay, and nudge him a bit, and then what's his response?
Yep.
He became to get emotional after that point, did he not?
He did.
Talking about his family.
Yeah, he wants to see his mom.
Did the defendant ever ask to stop the interview that you were conducting on him?
He did not.
Did he ever ask for a lawyer?
He did not.
He answered your questions.
He eventually answered the hard questions, not all of them, but enough to satisfy us.
Did he give you a physical response when you asked him if he understood his rights?
Yes. He nodded his head yes, that he understood.
He answered your questions even after he'd been warned that he didn't have to.
Yes.
Now, have you had the occasion as part of your investigation over the last couple of years to listen to a lot of jailhouse calls and read a lot of jail mail of the defendant?
Yes, I have.
Have you become familiar with the way he talks?
Yes, I have.
Does he talk in shocking ways even to his family?
He does.
Can he carry on a conversation?
Absolutely.
And then does he throw in shocking barbs that sometimes you don't understand?
Yes.
Does he talk in metaphors or poetic language?
He does.
Is that when you said that's Eddie being Eddie, is that what you're talking about?
That is.
Having reviewed the firearms forensics and the crime scene analysis and the autopsy, based on the positioning of loaded weapons at the crime scene, what were the only loaded weapons at the crime scene?
Well, all the weapons there had been fired. There was a .45 long Colt revolver above Chris Kyle's head. All shell casings inside of it were still there. The projectiles had been fired. In other words, Chris had fired, if Chris was holding that gun, which it appeared that he was, 6 rounds had been fired out of that gun. And then there was a Springfield XD-45 there with no ammunition left in it.
And that was the gun determined to have been used to kill Chris Kyle, is that right?
That is correct.
The weapon, the sidearms that Chris and Chad had on their persons, have they ever been pulled from the holster?
They had not.
Were they in the holster with the safeties on?
Yes, they were.
Did you find any indication through the crime scene or even the interview with the defendant that indicated that he was ever in imminent danger?
No, sir.
Ask the witness.
Well, you weren't in his mind, though, or to know if he was in imminent danger.
What do you mean in his mind?
You don't know what he was thinking, do you?
I interviewed him for what he would say about it. We've had other people interview him about mind stuff.
There was a group decision about not getting a warrant and getting a blood sample so we would know if what was in Eddie's system, correct?
We're comfortable with the decision we made with that.
No, my question is, who all was there to make that decision?
Myself, the district attorney, was there.
Nash,
Yes, sir.
and who else?
I believe that was it.
So both of y'all concurred not to take a sample of the blood.
Yes.
I'll pass it.
Very brief redirect, Your Honor. Since reference has been made to the law of self-defense in Texas, is the law that it's not in the head of the defendant, but in the mind of a reasonable person, there is an imminent threat to his physical danger? Is that what decides whether use of force is justified?
Yes, it has to be based upon the imminent threat of a reasonable person.
And can a person who is otherwise engaged in criminal activity claim self-defense?
They can claim it.
But is it the law that it can stand?
It is not the law.
Pass the witness.
I'm going to give a question, Judge.
All right, you may step down.